Welcome to our second part of the first assignment. So we're still doing 3D, so no AR VR yet. We'll probably primarily use the mouse in this assignment now, as we will add interactions to our scene. So in this assignment, we are going to implement two types of interactions: implicit and explicit interactions. I talked about this in class. I also added a few more slides to be even clearer about it. Implicit interactions do not require users' explicit or intentional input, because those are explicit interactions. So implicit could be system controlled animations, physics, particle systems. So those are things that we have actually done in seen in class. And then explicit interactions are those where you directly click an object, or you click to manipulate it, or you click an object that then manipulates a different object, like a light switch, or you click one object to spawn um, copies of another. And so I have examples of each of these, but yeah, I want to go through the requirements first. So for the A minus, first you choose interactions. You scope it to a total of 2 to 3 interactions. If you just do 2, it cannot be 2 implicit ones. It has to be at least 1 implicit and 1 explicit interaction. If you do more than 3, also cool. Just don't make it too repetitive. If you do more, make sure that you learn more. And so explicit interactions and implicit interactions, I have like some examples here in the slides. You remember probably from class, we had like animations, and I updated the slides with more videos. So you can actually, like in this one here, we actually have like an animation that has these objects fall down, and when you launch it, okay, here's when I launch the scene. Actually, both fall down, both cubes. This was just animation, and the one on the left was timeline, and the one on the right is actually with a script. And I'll explain how each of these are implemented if you need a refresher. So I now have videos for each of these. It's better to look at these videos, I think, than looking at the lecture recordings. But anyway, so going back to our assignment. I guess it's just here. All right. Also examples of explicit interactions. So figure that out for your scene. Don't just copy paste my examples, and then just. I mean, there is some exercise in making my code work with your scene, but I want you to modify the code that we provide as a starting point. So speaking of that, I will link a number of Unity packages. For each week, we have a Unity package of examples I show in class. Week 3 contains interaction examples. So this could be starting points for you. You will then, after you've chosen your implicit and explicit interactions, you will then implement 1 or 2 implicit interactions, 1 to 2 explicit interactions in your scene. It tells you to, make copies of the scene as you experiment with things. You should set your goals first and then see how, as you start really implementing them, how you may have to adapt the goals a little bit, maybe simplify, going for some compromises. So it talks about that. And you do also implement explicit interactions. So for implicit, examples include, again, like animation, physics, particle systems. I also say that you should play with spatial audio. Can be really cool with spatial audio, to especially with animations. Like imagine an object flying around the user, how the spatial sound could increase presence if we turned it into that scene then into a VR scene later, and that will come, but right now we're still doing just 3D. Anyway, so then you do an explicit interaction, at least one. For example, direct, proxy, and spawn interactions. I show each of these. I'll quickly also show you how to import my examples into your scene to get started. And then I give some other ideas, like what could be implemented. For example, also implementing both explicit and implicit interactions on the same object, such as different feedback when hovering as opposed to actually clicking an object. It's very common for buttons, for example, or allowing the user to track and shoot a flying object by hitting it with a mouse. I got this idea as I was working on one of the example scenes, but there's like aim labs and whatnot for various shooters that is just based on this principle. You have to track an object and click it to practice your aim. And then the last step is actually, and I'll probably get back to this later, creating a more complex scene using prefab. So I want you to go through the process of like implementing interactions and turning your objects in the scene into interactive objects, and then create prefabs from them, and then create a more complex scene that contains several of these objects. Prefabs can be extremely powerful in two ways. If you have lots of background objects, like for example trees, maybe you have a variety of 3 different types of trees, and then you place them in the scene quickly, you should use prefabs rather than copy pasting complex parts of the hierarchy or the scene graph. Um, and in the other way, they can be extremely powerful if they actually bind complex logic. For example, in the past, before building blocks, you always had to look for the right kind of like Oculus prefab to make sure that you have like eye tracking, hand tracking, and whatnot. And it was these were pre-packaged trees of game objects with specific components, which is essentially what prefabs are. And so that's how it used to be in the past. All right, so here in the tips and resources, I'm going to actually link the interaction examples from week 3 that I showed in class and that I have created videos of in the slides. And the rest is roughly the same. Please add to the assignment folder that you have already created in here. Just make sure that your new stuff is in there. I will create a separate video to show you how to download and import these Unity packages into a new project. So I'm going to have a separate recording for this. This recording was just to walk over the assignment instructions. I think it could be really good for you to actually import and play with my Unity examples in code, but really make it your own. Don't just take the stuff that I created as examples for you and really just like see how you can integrate it with your stuff. Think about what you want to accomplish and how the stuff that I provided you with needs to be changed and adapted. And I do want to see some major differences between the examples I provided and the examples that you implement as part of your assignment, just to be clear on that.